says, I'm a naturopath, which is a bigger picture than just being a nutritionist, because a naturopath will take into account the environment as well, your home life, your family life, your the whole picture. I also do something called kinesiology, which is not particularly about the talk today, but it's worth mentioning because it's very important. And I do what's called vital mineral therapy, and I also use Genova diagnostics an awful lot now for stool analysis, because obviously what you put in here comes out at the other end, and you can learn an awful lot about that, what's going on in the gut. So I'm focusing principally on the mouth, the stomach and the small intestines. Now that, if you like, is where the leaky gut starts. It's not so much in the large intestines, and that also is a big issue, so I'm going to talk about the large intestine in another programme. So this is how I see the problem, especially when I go out walking. So does anyone recognise that place? It's the meeting of the waters, yes, and it's really congested and chaotic, and that's how I see people's guts when they first come to see me, and that's how I want them to look when they leave. So it's beautiful, smooth and calm, and just very healthy. Now, the bit that we're talking about here today is what you put in your mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, and the small intestine. And that is it for today. There will be further ones in which we talk about the large intestine and how that affects us. There's also just behind here the pancreas, and we're going to talk about the pancreas as well, because that affects our digestion. So I hope that I'm going to give you information that you haven't heard of before. And the first word is calciphylaxis. Is there anybody here who's heard of calciphylaxis? Oh, good. And biofilms, you might have heard of biofilms. Anyone yet heard of biofilms? These are coming up, very much so. Stomach acid, we all know the stomach should be very acidic, but do we know where that acid comes from? And kinases, this is very new science. Does anyone know what a kinase is? It's a messenger. It's how they've worked out how food talks to our bodies. So there are some you can't ignore the emotional aspect of food, and I think this is as important as the physical aspect of food. So if you are hugely stressed, it will affect your digestion. If you have bad habits, it will affect your digestion, and also beliefs. Why would my mother want to poison me? Why should I change my diet? Because that's what my mother fed me. And why would she want to poison me? So these are the classic 10 signs of what makes a leaky gut. So really, if you have any of these, and I think the second one is quite interesting, isn't it? Gingivitis. Has anyone thought of a leaky gut being associated with gum disease? A poor immune system makes sense, but for instance, headaches and brain fog, that is also a sign of a leaky gut. Memory loss, excessive fatigue. So you can sort of see the program building up, and possibly in one of the future ones I will do the link between the leaky gut and Alzheimer's, and how we are, if you like, creating our own reality with what we eat and losing our memories. Skin rashes, acne, eczema, rosacea all start in the leaky gut. Cravings. So hypoglycemia starts in the leaky gut with too much sugar in the diet, and nutritional deficiencies, arthritis, joint pain, especially random pain. You know, one minute you have a pain in your back or your elbow, and then the next minute is in your shoulder. Also, very, very much proved by Professor Basant-Puri, he is head of psychiatry at the Hammersmith Hospital, and he's now mostly on research at Imperial College London, that depression, anxiety, attention deficit disorders and ADHDs, these are all linked to leaky gut problems, not solely but partly. So we are experiencing at the moment more inflammation as a problem that we experience than we have ever done before. And if you like, a revolution is something where change happens upon change, happens upon change, happens upon change. And it's very difficult for us as humans to adapt to constant change. Now, calciphylaxis is the body's attempt to reduce inflammation. That's a very interesting thought, isn't it? And obviously, if you keep using calcium, you will be depleting what should be in your bones and your teeth to put out the fire. And it's such an important thing that people have no awareness of, that I really want to stress this. So calcium is moved from the bones by stress mostly, because stress will elevate inflammation pathways, and then it will accumulate in soft tissues like your joints, your ligaments, but also the skin inside you. So you can get constipated simply by having a very high level of calcium in your large intestine, because that is just further skin, isn't it? And the movement is associated with stress. There is a reference there to Dr. Hans Sale, if any of you want to look up what he was talking about. And, you know, looking after your teeth and gums also means dealing with your stress. You are likely these days to be slightly intolerant, if not massively intolerant, to gluten. And I think that things like gluten do communicate through the gut. Now, GALT, gut-associated lymphoid tissue. I'm going to get the word slime in pretty soon, and now is the time, because we are supposed to be mucosally lined all the way from our mouth to our anus. It is all one big slime, one big pile of mucus. And that is so important, because gluten will break up the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, and it will get into the system, creating inflammation. Stress also impacts the immune system, sets up an antigen reaction, so you get all over inflammation. That's, you know, random, or sometimes you ache from head to foot, sometimes you just ache in your elbows and arms, and then gingivitis in the gut, in the gums. Low level inflammation. It is hugely important as a starter to how your health progresses. So we get the movement of white blood cells, prostaglandins, leukotrienes and thromboxanes. So here we go. This is what is a typical bacterial profile of the average person's oral microbiome, what's in their saliva. And you can see here that we've got some quite nasty ones like Campylobacter. But over here in the dental biofilms we have Klebsiella, it's a really nasty one, the Strep Infections, and this is just average. You know, sometimes I've looked at slides because I'm a bit of a nerd for this, and they have hundreds of different bacteria in their mouth. So it's hugely important. And what happens if you don't have a strong stomach acid is these get into your small intestines, causing a huge problem. Now, the slimy areas are, you know, inhabited by something called the bacteria. And what the bacteria like to do is to protect themselves. They cover themselves with a biofilm. Now, I liken it to, you know, like putting a snuggy blanket over your head and just settling down and creating a community. And these cause havoc once they get into the small intestine. But also, just being in the mouth is a very poor start to what essentially is going to happen in your gut. Now, does anyone know, has anyone heard of that statement before?
No. Can't say it.
The link between gum disease and some cancers is proven by research, and here we have one of the very latest ones, 2018, that there is a connection between bad gum disease, known as periodontitis, and heart disease. This has been well known for quite some time, but the new science suggests that 24% of people who have gum disease which is unaddressed are more likely to develop cancer, which is coming from this journal here. And this is a highly respected institute. So, you know, this is not small stuff, is it? This is big stuff. When you think that your gums and the state of your gums relate to your heart and relate to cancer, and I'm going to show you how that happens later on. So, I would put this up, wouldn't I? I mean, everybody who comes to see me know that oil pulling is really major with me. And I think that this sort of is showing probably sesame oil, which is very good, but I would always recommend coconut oil. So I hand out with every person coconut oil and oil pulling, and why coconut is so particularly good for you.
Olive oil?
Well, olive oil is good too, but olive oil does not have something called monolaurin in, which converts to lauric acid, which really, really burns out those biofilms and gets rid of the thing. So I don't recommend people swallow it either. You have to spit it out, obviously. Now, the second line of defence, once you've got your mouth clean, the second line of defence for you is going to be the stomach. And it is the only organ in the body that should be incredibly acidic. There is a mucosal lining of the stomach which protects the epithelial cells of the stomach from being burnt. But think acid, think stomach is about what I do. And you need strong stomach acid coming out regularly. Now, if you are stressed, it's like being in the fight or flight response. That is like having a little saber-toothed tiger on your shoulder. And when you are very stressed, the last thing you should be thinking about is having a sandwich. What you really should be thinking about is, do I run away or do I fight the saber-toothed tiger? You don't think about eating. That's actually nature's way of protecting you, because when you are very stressed, the blood doesn't flow, you're there to fight or flight, and you cannot produce any stomach acid under stress. So eating when you're highly stressed is a very bad idea. It's better to go without and to use techniques to calm down. The parietal glands are also in the stomach lining, and they produce something called intrinsic factor, which shortage of that ends up with a B12 deficiency. So B12 supplements, it's a sort of fix rather than addressing the cause. The cause is that you're stressed and that your stomach is not producing good intrinsic factor from those same glands that produce acid. B12 deficiency shows up as cobalt on the hair mineral analysis, and you end up with low methylcobalamin or B12. The best B12 is methylcobalamin. The next one that shows up on the hair mineral analysis is low sodium and potassium. Those are your electrolyte balance. So if your sodium and potassium are really low, it means your stomach will not be producing enough hydrochloric acid. Also, low sodium and potassium does usually reflect that that person is dehydrated. And I see people, and I know that they're not just recently dehydrated, they're probably dehydrated from early childhood. They've lost the ability to recognize thirst. They are chronically dehydrated, which means it's been going on for a huge amount of time. Now, if you like, if you were looking to cause extreme stress to a person, say in a situation of trying to interrogate in a war, all you would need to do is deprive that person of water and salt, because it is so stressful for the body to be dehydrated. So it will increase your anxiety, which perpetuates the stress if you are chronically dehydrated. And then you will have poor digestion, and that will wreck your small intestines, which we're going to go on to next. So this is a typical cross-section of what they call the gastric mucosa, but that's the cells in the stomach. And you can see all these cells are producing loads of mucus, which I find quite interesting, that we should be so slimy on the inside. Then we have parietal cells, which are secreting stomach acid, and we're also secreting intrinsic factor here to make methylcobalamin. And then I'm going to give a little slide next, which is too much information. But I have to put it on because this is going to go out and people want to read this. And it is just basically that these cells, the chief cells, the G cells, the ECL cells, do produce lots and lots of stomach acid. I think that's all that slide really needs to say in a sort of technical way. I have a big issue with proton pump inhibitors when people come to see me, or Movicol, or anything that dampens. I mean, sometimes it's very important just as a short program, but if you read the small print in your proton pump inhibitor box, you will see that you should constantly be evaluated, and that's the bit that gets missed. So people end up on those for years. And I say, well, have you been back to your doctor? And he says, yes, it's fine. Well, you know what? It isn't fine. It causes huge, huge problems with people just renewing their prescriptions and reducing their stomach acid to 0. So we get all the parasites or biofilms, the bacteria, passing into the small intestine. And so I just want you to think about this, that most people have developed their gut health problems from childhood. It just is so interesting when we do the timeline accurately that they have problems. A caesarean child will have less of a good bioculture, microbiome is the buzzword now, than a child that is born vaginally, and that makes a huge difference in the future if they were not breastfed for any reason. And let's face it, this is not the blame game. Sometimes babies are born by caesarean and the mother has the baby and the baby is alive. That's the best outcome. But for perfection, a natural birth, breastfed, not weaned too soon, antibiotics, they're life-saving, but overuse of them has been a big problem. And at the moment I do know that people who go into the RVI A&E have this picture about as big as the picture there, which says we are not prescribing antibiotics anymore. I don't know what they do for those who really need it, but they must give them intravenously, but that's what it says. Stress in the family can cause huge health problems. Poor food choices, poor water supply. You know, we all assume our water is just right, but how many of you in this room have actually tested their water supply to see what is in it? And you would be very surprised, as quite a few people are when I recommend that they get it tested. And genetics, but don't forget epigenetics is the medicine of switching off those genes that express certain problems. So checking this out on the timeline is something that I would recommend you do. You can either do it now or you can take those away with you and just start and figure out when things went wrong, divorces, debt, family, constellation. You do talk to your guts. And this is how it works. The neural crest in the fetus develops to a neural tube, and the same cells that divide form the gut as form the brain. So the gut-brain connection is absolutely scientifically proved. They know from studying the development of a fetus. And what goes on in the gut goes on in the brain, and what goes on in your thoughts affects your health. And I also think that Alzheimer's is largely a toxic environment, but also toxic thoughts. Take a deep breath here, everyone, me included, because I have rattled through the first bit. But if you want to use your functional medicine timeline now to map out the following, you can do. Vaccinations and how many. Childhood diseases. So, for instance, chickenpox. Has anyone here had shingles?
Yeah.
Shingles is chickenpox when you were little. It's the same varicella virus that is just lurking again, and your body can't cope, and its expression, if you're stressed, will be shingles. So viruses really never go away. Getting rid of viruses is incredibly difficult.
But didn't people used to have like chickenpox groups where they would get the kids together so that they could teach them, teach the immune system?
Yeah.
But then it never goes away.
Well, no, it never goes away. You always have the virus. Yeah, and the virus will come back later on, and they know that, you know, the virus is always there. But it's better to have chickenpox when you're young, because your immune system copes better with it. Yeah. If you have it as an adult, it's so serious, it can be life-threatening. Okay. So that's why they like to get children all together to give them chickenpox. It was
the body can learn.
So the body learns, and then they're protected because they've had it once. I do know that now children are having it more than once, but that's a different story. I also want you to look at whether or not you have amalgam fillings, because amalgam fillings will affect your health. Mercury, one of the most toxic substances known to man, it should not be in your mouth. Oil pulling will help relieve some of the mercury load in your mouth. So doing it twice a day, just for 10 minutes, is going to be very, very good for those people who still have mercury in their mouth, or who still, who had it put in the drill and fill days, as they were called. That was me, drill and fill. 14, just had a mouth full of fillings, and then I got rid of them rather dangerously without barrier dentistry when I was in my 40s, and then spent the next 20 years detoxifying the mercury from having that done. Antibiotic treatment, it will destroy the microbiome, and it will destroy the lining of the small intestine. So it's not so much that it kills all the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, but that it destroys the slime in your small intestine. And then this is not about blame, it's very important. So I don't know if any of you have filled in anything, but have you spotted a link to anything that's going on? Maybe take it home and think about it and see if there are any links as to what's going on now that might have happened way back into your early childhood and possibly your teens. So the leaky gut, what I'm trying to say is the leaky gut does not just happen. It is something that builds up over a long period of time through stress, through toxins and food particles crossing over the sensitive villi of the small intestine and infecting our gut. So when I see something sort of terribly poetic like that, that's one of my favourite waterfalls. I find it incredibly calming, but it also makes me think of the cascade that should be going on of health within our small intestines. It's funny, I go out walking and I see my insides when I'm walking, or I see people's insides. Yeah. So, here we go on to something quite complicated, but it's really important to say it, which is the anybody heard of a neoplastic reaction? No? So here we go, the bigger plot of the leaky gut. Undigested food particles and toxins, healthy tight junctions there and there, a faulty tight junction. So these little things here, which should be going through the villi, sensitive villi, are getting into your system there, and they're partially digested, and the body sees them as aliens, setting up inflammation, immunology, autoimmune, and neoplastic reactions. So what is a neoplastic reaction? It's not great, is it? No. Neoplastic means it is a tumour. It's tumour forming. So you actually can get serious cancers just by having a leaky gut. So I think this is incredibly important, that people are made aware that in a way your food choices and your lifestyle lead to something as serious as a neoplasm, a tumour, and the 4 groups. And I don't know if any of you get the Sunday Times. I did have a copy of the article, but New Science shows that the fast food that we live on these days, industrial food as I call it, is linked to cancer.
I've seen it.
And you've seen it. Has anyone else seen it?
No. A lot of newspapers apparently.
A lot of newspapers at the moment. I posted it on my Facebook page, which So it's there for anyone who wants to go. So, well, let's just jump into what this is all about. So here we go back with this woman, and we're talking about this here now. We're talking about the small intestines, and we're talking about the pancreas, which is just behind there as well. To avoid the leaky gut, you have to break down your food really, really well. So it starts with the health in your mouth, your good stomach acid, and then breaking down your food really well. Now, anyone who comes to see me knows that my big passion, if I were to say, right, you're only allowed one supplement, it would be a what? What would it be?
Hydrochloric acid.
Yes, a digestive enzyme, a hydrochloric acid, absolutely. Because at least then, when you eat your food, you are getting the maximum nutrients out of it, and those food particles that go into the small intestine are not going to be rubbing up against the sensitive villi and breaking the tight junctions and getting into your system. So we have all those ones there, which are gastric, stomach enzymes, and then who knows that the pancreas actually helps with the digestion of fat, carbs and proteins? Who knew that?
Yeah.
Well, yes, because you'd be yes, but most people don't know that. Most people think pancreas and insulin, but they don't realise that it's got this incredibly important other function, which is that it breaks down your lipases, your carbohydrates, your amylases, and your proteins is your protein. So stomach basically is the gastric enzymes with the protein breakdown. Then further over here, you've got to do the pancreatic enzymes. And then you've also got to have a very, very good gallbladder. Now, I don't know why, but I still get people coming to see me saying, oh, my doctor took the gallbladder out because, you know, it's not useful. Well, if you don't have a gallbladder, you can't actually secrete a deacidifier. So, if you like, this is the stomach's about here, and the gallbladder squirts into the duodenum and neutralises the very acidic food that is coming out of the stomach. Otherwise, it's just going to burn with the acid in it all your small intestine, which would be a big disaster.
Why are our doctors removing these and telling people that they're not useful?
Good question. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer.
That's totally backwards.
Well, I don't know the answer. No acid, no digestion. And gastric reflux actually starts with too little acid. So this person develops, if you like, fermentation going on in their gut, which is very much associated with the gastric reflux that happens, that burns the esophagus and leads to esophageal cancer. You have to have these really, really important pancreatic enzymes. And so moving on from there, I just can't talk about that strongly enough. What we're doing is creating a good conversation with our food by breaking it down properly. And the conversation with our food has now been mapped out scientifically as well. We do actually talk to our food with kinases. And this is where I come on to the kinase and the sort of importance of this discovery. And it is considered in medical terms as one of the most important things they found out. We can't ignore them. Obviously, it's hugely sophisticated science, so not for now. But the phytochemicals are the messages in your food. So if you have industrial food, there are very few messages that are good for you in that food. Does everyone know what I mean by industrial food?
Yes.
We eat a huge amount now that's made in factories. And the phytochemicals in green vegetables are completely different. They will have a completely different conversation with you. And they inflame the messengers, or dampen them, or inflame them, whichever way you want to put it. The kinases are the messengers. They activate something called prostaglandins and leukotrienes, thromboxanes. These are the guys, COX-1, COX-2, Mr. and Mrs. Cox, let's call them. They activate inflammation around the body like these. And if you like, when you have pain, don't forget we need pain because pain tells us that we've fallen over and broken a leg, and you know the body will start trying to repair it, so we need to know we've broken a leg with pain. But what we don't need is this random pain going around our body. Paracetamols will block those expressions of pain. But it's really food, the phytochemicals, which work upstream, that will deactivate the inflammation. So what you eat really, really matters. Now, I do have a diagram which I can't put on here because I know it is protected, copywritten, and it is the one thing that you go back to. When I say go back upstream, you go back to something called the NF-kappa B factor. If you can turn that off, that makes a huge difference. So what you eat matters. Put simply, using kinase modulators, a good diet rich in plants works better than a paracetamol. So who in here has had paracetamol in the last few years? Aspirin, yeah. See, I haven't had one since I can't remember, you know, because I use food. Yeah, food turns my kinases into the right mode. So this is a very much simpler version. What's happening in your body at a cellular level is translated by these kinases. And they control the messages from inside the cells to the DNA. Do you realise, therefore, that what you're eating now will influence your child's genetics as well? That is quite something, isn't it? So for mothers who are having babies, it's so important to get good nutrition. And it is so important that people get this message. They're regulated by what's on your plate, and food can dramatically influence your health. And it's pretty much everyone in the West doesn't get this point. It's such a shame. So this is just to give you a picture of what the difference is between industrial food and healthy, fresh watermelon. It's interesting, isn't it? I think they have actually got a McDonald's, which is still, I don't know, perhaps, let's just say a beef burger. Let's not associate it with a company. And this one is still, as it was, day 180. They've had this beef burger for 5 years now, and it still hasn't deteriorated. It's quite something. We don't, we don't realise it. We don't realise how we're buying food. And unfortunately, I think the sad part is that food is so expensive when it's organic. So if you have to eat organic, make it be the vegetables, which I think are hugely important as organic, and maybe just reduce your meat level and try and find something that's ethically farmed if you can't afford organic. I mean, it adds such a lot of money onto the housekeeping. So this is honestly how we buy food. We have a belief, we're brainwashed by advertising, and then we buy and we go round in a circle. So I don't know if you want to add a few more memories here as to how you ended up liking the food that you like, you know, who eats cornflakes? Does anyone in this room eat cornflakes?
No.
Very well trained. We all used to, but it's not a great idea. And this is a very bold statement. 95% they reckon is caused by food choices, chronic illnesses that we get. So I'm not talking about an acute reaction, which is like having mumps or measles, or if anybody gets those anymore, but you know, sort of if you fall over and break a leg, that's an acute problem. But the long-term problems with your health do come down to food ingredients and also exercise, which is another issue. And I think that's such a good picture of how I see people when they perhaps don't realise. It is a belief. One has to respect that they believe they're doing the right thing. They're also afraid. People get very afraid. And they're also not aware. There is no understanding. This is a very interesting slide because it does show that, you know, how they make hens, chickens turn out differently. You know, so this is how a hen would look in the 50s, and this is how it looks now in 2008. Yeah. So that's 88 days of growth, 88 days of growth, and this is 47 days of growth. So it's quite incredible.
This is just because of what they're feeding them.
This is what they're feeding them, yeah.
And
then
then
we
we
eat
eat that.
well, isn't it?
And then we eat that, and I don't think it does us any good because they've got growth hormones in.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, as a tip, if you can't afford an organic chicken, don't ever eat the wings, because that's where they inject all the growth hormones, I think. I'm not actually an expert on farming, but I have heard that that's where they do put all the, and of course it's in the feed as well. Read the labels, make a plan. Now this is where I'm going to absolutely major on, because if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to know how to get there? You cannot set off in this life anymore without a good plan, and planning what you eat is important. And also forgive yourself if it doesn't work out for you. Don't sort of get worked up and think, oh, I can't do this at all. Just start again. Doesn't matter. And also, this is the truth, which is where the timeline comes in, is that I have never treated anyone who doesn't know or have a clue why they're ill. And they all seem to work it out within an hour of being with me. And, you know, that just is my guidance for them, my planning for them. So I'm going to talk now about a company called Genova Diagnostics, simply because I want you to see what is available in terms of out there. What is out there to help you? You've got to find out what's going on in your gut. And this is the map. So I have one of their products here, which is called the gastrointestinal stool profile, the GI analysis stool profile. And what they're looking for is abundance. So 95% of a healthy population is the green area, and they have a relative abundance, and most people are in this red zone here where they do not have an abundance of good bacteria. So I have to slot in a little bit about bacteria here, but you can also see that sometimes if a person has too many of the wrong bacteria, no matter how hard they try, they will never lose weight as efficiently as someone who has a different microbiome. So your gut bacteria influence whether or not your mind thinks you're in famine, and whether you hold on to every single calorie you get out of your food. And one of the biomarkers they've now got on this report is, you can see that the person has good pancreatic elastase, but that this particular one is trending on the cusp of type 2 diabetes, metabolic disorder. They probably have hypoglycemia. This is the one that always worries me, and that is the fact that they have quite a high fecal fat content. That means their pancreas is not breaking down the fats properly. Hugely important, because without good fats you get anxiety. You can also see that the triglycerides are really high, which is a better measure than cholesterol, and that their long-chain fatty acids are too high. Cholesterol is okay, but showing up with the blood pressure and so on. So the fecal fat, secretory IgA, is very high. That means they're heading into food intolerance country. That person will have food intolerances. They will have to do an elimination diet to reduce their intolerance to certain foods, then reintroduce them later. It is not the same as being allergic, although it is possible to get rid of allergies. I just thought I'd throw that one in so that you know what pancreatic elastase is. And this person is making enough enzymes to digest protein and carbs, but not enough to digest the fats. So here we have that person's pancreatic elastase. It's right up in the green area. It's very, very good. But protein breakdown is not good. Fecal fat, abysmal, far too high. This person is not able to digest fats. That makes them a likely candidate to be anxious or depressed, because fats and good fats in particular, and omega-3 fats in particular, are absolutely critical for your brain, your emotional health. then we can see that this person has very high triglycerides, and that comes out of the American system where they measure triglycerides, not cholesterol. Actually, this person's cholesterol in their stool, don't forget this is a stool analysis, is very low, and phospholipids are very high. So, you know, it's a very useful way. Cultivating bacteria, that person has Citrobacter brachy, could have come from the mouth. That's one of the ones that is found in the mouth. So it's got straight through to their intestines. And then, you know, additional ones that they test for are all of those. Now, it is hugely expensive. It's £355, but it is a map. For those of you who are thinking, well, I don't have a map, you have to ask yourself, are you worth it? Now I've got that on, what am I going to do? There we go. Right, so what can we do to help ourselves? Now, I put that one up because everybody knows I always say go walk on a beach with bare feet. It makes a difference. And so few of us do it. I don't even do it. I haven't done it for ages. I must get out to the beach. The first hot tip is use something that's going to really destroy the biofilms. So we've got oil pulling as an idea. The next one would be to use charcoal. Charcoal is incredibly good at breaking down biofilms. Oil pulling, well, I would say that, wouldn't I? Because I'm passionate about that.
What's the charcoal?
Now,
Is that a toothpaste or?
it is toothpaste. It's black toothpaste.
Oh, yeah. I see.
Yeah. Have you seen it? It's online. I just picked that up from Amazon. Just type in charcoal toothpaste and it'll come up on Amazon with all sorts of things.
What
you know,
about, like, does it make any difference if it's activated? Or?
No, I don't think so.
Right, because
Yeah.
I wondered if that was like a selling tool.
Well, no, I don't think so.
Right.
When I'm talking to people who come to see me, they know that I'm absolutely crazy about flaxseed. Now, if you want to save money on flaxseed, buy the whole seed and put it through a grinder. I mean, you know, an old Magimix would do, or a NutriBullet if you've got one, which I do have one. And hemp seed as well. It forms mucus. Mucus is absolutely vital to healing the leaky gut. Chia seeds, eat green food. It really has a good conversation with you, green food does. Now, olive oil, I'm passionate about olive oil, so this lady here has talked to me about olive oil, using it for oil pulling. I would say buy the best you can afford, organic preferably, and put it on your food. Now, I haven't been able to trace the science on the website yet, but if you put olive oil over your warm cooked vegetables, which I have been doing intuitively, it actually increases the messages. The kinases get really activated by olive oil on warm steamed vegetables. Rosemary is vastly overlooked, and it is a natural herb to this country, and it works upstream to help dampen down the inflammatory pathways. So we don't need to turn to exotic things from abroad. We actually have rosemary in our repertoire. Just buy some and grow it in the garden. The interesting thing is that you can have too much turmeric. Did anyone know that?
No.
Yeah,
You
it makes
can-
your teeth go yellow.
Well, it makes your teeth go yellow, but I mean everything else as well. I mean all your cookery instruments go yellow. But if you overdo the rosemary, it's a bit like overdo the turmeric, you actually are, it's like taking too much paracetamol. It just starts the inflammatory pathways off again. And ginger as well. Ginger works downstream. So what I find so sad at the moment is that there's a huge amount of information about turmeric and ginger, but everybody's forgotten the olive oil and the rosemary.
Are you talking about rosemary as an oil or
No, not as an oil. It burns if it's
as
an oil.
the raw?
The herb.
Cucumber.
Yeah. I think it's very good.
Just as good
Yeah.
as fresh.
Dry is not bad. Yeah,
Dry is not
but it's
bad.
very, very reasonably priced in supermarkets now. And do you know what? Come the nice weather, just go out and buy one, and you'll be picking from it all year round. Yeah. and you can grow them on your...
They go for winters as well.
And they grow in the winter as well. I mean, I've been cutting from my rosemary plant. One has died, sadly, I moved it, and it didn't like that. The other one that I'm passionate about, if you've been to see me, is the apple. But also, if you can't afford digestive enzymes, do take a tablespoonful of mother apple cider vinegar. It's got to have the, you know, the bacteria in, but also it's got to have that sort of full essence of what the vinegar is.
Take that in water or just...
Well, you know, I would take it in water, because have you ever tried to drink a tablespoon? It's pretty grim. So I would just
you don't
water
want
it down.
that concentration of
You don't
acetic
really
acid,
want
do
it,
you?
no. Now, if I'm going to start from the top of what I think is going to heal a leaky gut, I want you to look at Ultra Inflamex. It depends on how desperate you are. It's hugely expensive, but it is going to work because it has another product in it apart from it's got rosemary in it, it's got hops in it as well, and those, it's also got turmeric in, but those are the ones that will heal the leaky gut. It's also easy to use, because I think if you're going to have, say, a month or 2 weeks of intensive healing, then that's the one to invest in. That's the one I get the best results with. Ultra Inflamex from a company called Nutri Advanced. Glutagenics, also a very, very good product. And Ultra Clear Sustain, which has L-glutamine in. Now, that's come up, L-glutamine, and I'm going to talk about it now. Glutamine is what you get from eating meat. So vegans and vegetarians are at a slight disadvantage here because they do not have sufficient quantities of glutamine unless they add it as a supplement. And you know, another thing that people don't realise is you can exercise too much. So you can get an awful lot of inflammatory pathways. You know, like, who can I think of who's been exercising too much recently? The cyclists, you know, those people and those people doing the long distance skiing, I mean, they must have so much lactic acid build-up, and they must have to take something for it afterwards to be fit to go on again. NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, that is basically the paracetamols and the aspirin. Gluten in recovery. If you heal the leaky gut, mostly the gluten doesn't affect you. That is my discovery. Some dairy, dairy can be over-processed, so it's pasteurised, homogenised. There is a farm, I can give you the address. It does raw milk, and raw milk is a completely different issue to the stuff that gets delivered or left in the supermarkets. Nutri-Gest is the one that I'm recommending now. Not if gastritis is present. So if you have a bubbling and acid reflux, you need to start with something gentler, marshmallow and gamma oryzanol. And if you're going to have blood sugar problems, the best cinnamon to have is this one, which is from Indigo Herbs, not the one in Holland and Barrett. So the one in Indigo Herbs, Zeylanicum, will control blood sugar. The one in Holland and Barrett thins the blood. So not a great idea if you're on warfarin, and I think they really shouldn't talk about it. Good quality water. Hydration is key to your health. If you are chronically dehydrated, you will always struggle to produce the mucus and the acids and all the other things that the body needs to draw on water for. And then you really do need to have ways of coping with your stress. At the moment, my way of coping with stress is I keep saying I'm having fun. And do you know what? My brain tells, and I end up, it's been good fun. It's just that simple. So I was incredibly stressed trying to get out of the house this morning. I said, actually, I'm having fun. And by the time I got here, I was having fun. Yes, I was.
Can I ask, on those things you just put to get, but do you get them all, or do you just get one? That's why I get them stuck.
I would do the whole lot. I would start slowly, baby step by baby step, Dawn. Start
So
slowly.
you get them all,
Yeah.
and you take them all. At the same time?
Oh no, sorry, no. That would be by my advice. You know, I'm just saying to people that that's what's going to help you. But I wouldn't necessarily go out and just buy that for yourself. I would say that I would look at the situation and start to analyse it, and then make a recommendation on that.
What's the marshmallow and gamma? Is that in a capsule form?
It is in a capsule form.
Is that indigo again, or?
No, it's not. No, sorry. It is the same company, Nutrient Advanced, and it is a very, very good one for people who have the gastritis.
So start with that, and then maybe the nutrient.
Yeah. So if you have a problem, start with that one, and then go on to the
reflux as well.
Acid reflux as well, yeah. But I've also got lots of other ideas. I mean, you know, slippery elm is very good for acid reflux, except it is a sort of endangered species now, so it's a difficult one. I'll just let this lady take a photograph of that slide. Hello there.
I was just going to ask, you mentioned good quality water. Now, this is something that bugs me as well.
Bugs me hugely.
Yeah, because our water is obviously poisoned with all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And against our, you know.
It's very difficult.
So, would you recommend getting a water distiller, or?
I mean, the bottom line with a water distiller is that you have to add back in the electrolytes, you know,
Right.
and it doesn't taste very nice either. It's an acquired taste. Well, I find it tastes a bit like, you know, nothing. Yeah. If you're in an area that has fluoride, fluoride is very good if you just spit it out after cleaning your teeth, but actually fluoride is a known neurotoxin.
I know.
And it's so bad for you.
Yeah.
And then there are other things in the water as well, which, you know, we're not going to talk about now, but it's so bad. Yeah. And, you know, there are no safe limit for toxic metals in water. It's well known, but they're still trying to fob us off that there are safe limits, and there aren't.
So what about bottled water?
Well, bottled water, no, I tend to avoid bottled water, so I'm using this. This is about 3 years old, and I use charcoal. And I've gone back to using this because this will boil up again and reactivate the charcoal.
Oh,
And
right.
that's a Block and Blum, I think it's called. Black and Blum. Black and Blum. Now that is my one of choice. It's not very easy to put into a car, you know, where you hold your water in the car, a receptacle in the car.
Yeah.
It's a bit big for that.
So will the charcoal remove heavy metals from water, or?
I'm not going to cover that bit. It's not to do with the leaky gut. No.
Okay.
Yeah. So the mucilaginous, eat anytime muesli. Colostrum. I think colostrum is a terribly good one to start. It's like going back to mother, isn't it? The very first milk a mother gives her baby is called colostrum, and colostrum will heal the leaky gut. So a baby that is not breastfed from birth will not have that colostrum, which heals the gut. Therefore, they're always at a slight disadvantage. So colostrum, New Zealand, ask me for the email, and I will put you onto it. Bone broth. If you want to boil up bones, it does have the collagen in it. It's not my favourite, but this one is. That's a very good one. Biosil, and Biosil also takes out some of the toxins. Toxaprevent, I haven't got a copy of that there, but I think it's an incredibly important one. If you have a damaged gut, or if you've had antibiotics, you definitely need to be taking Saccharomyces boulardii with the probiotics, otherwise they don't stick in the large intestine. So the large intestine is where you want all your microbiome to be, not the small intestine. And ideally, if you were in France or Germany, you would put your probiotics in your bottom and let it go upwards.
Wow.
Much, much better than taking them and destroying them through the stomach acid and digestion. So Culturelle is another highly researched one, very, very good for post-antibiotic treatment. Vitamins A and D, preferably in combination with K2. Vitamin A heals the leaky gut. It's one of those ones that people don't realise. Now, in years gone by, we all used to eat liver and heart. And I have to say, I can't do it anymore. So I can't preach to you about eating liver because it's full of vitamin A. And one helping of liver, it's incredibly cheap and it would be enough for the week. But I can't do it. And NAC converts the glutathione, which again heals the leaky gut. So glutathione is about twice the price of N-acetyl L-cysteine, and then glutamine, yet again, meat is the best provider. And I just have put that in. Glutamine, digestive and brain health, so important. Skin, muscles, anti-carcinogenic. It is found a little bit in plant protein.
Which plants?
Well, I don't know, Jo, because I've never actually done the research on it, because you know I'm still a sort of a meat eater, and I'm on the cusp of changing. And strangely enough, quite a lot of people my age are thinking of changing into vegetarians. So by the time I next talk to anyone, I will have that, but I just didn't find them. Whey protein has oodles of glutamine, and some people say it is an essential one and some say it isn't. Now, I put some nice website addresses there which we can go back to because we're just running out of time a little bit. I think the one that I like the most myself is Sayajai. Has anyone heard of Sayajai?
No.
When you go onto his website, you will get a sort of PhD level of information. So I would suggest start with Dr. Axe. Joe McCullough, always banging the drum about toxins and Monsanto and so on and so forth. Cytoplan for very, very good food state, you know, so these are grown through feeding plants. It's called hydroponically cultivating the brassica with the minerals so that when you eat the food, it's very, very high in zinc. Eat the supplement. Igenus, the science is second to none. Professor Basant-Puri actually got omega-3 supplements for children on the NHS. I think it's just been taken off, but I would recommend anyone who wants to try for their children to have a go at badgering their doctor to get those. Indigo herbs is a favourite. And then, has anyone heard of Nipun Mehta? I think that's how you pronounce it. Wonderful. He sends out such spiritually uplifting emails, so I like him very much. And, you know, just because something is from nature, it doesn't mean it's safe. So what people don't realise is that mercury is a natural product. It is a natural mineral. So is aluminium. Whoever thought of digging up those big aluminium reserves needs to be, you know, addressed.
Yes.
And an awful lot of the toxins in our environment are actually natural. So it doesn't mean it's safe or it's best. Oleic acid, incredibly good. Rosemary, hops. Too much is harmful. The EPA from Igenus works very much upstream, very good as stopping viruses from proliferating in the body. So don't waste time and money buying things that aren't going to help you, is essentially.
What does EPA mean?
Eicosapentaenoic acid. So most of the fish oils that you buy have two versions of fish oil, eicosapentaenoic acid and I can't say that word, sorry, I'm hopeless at that sort of thing. Unless I read it, I can't say. But they are the two that most have. But the research of Professor Basant-Puri that found out that if you have a 90% EPA, so just one form, it's far, far more effective than having the two together, the EPA and the DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. I've got it now. There you go. And obviously those are very upstream and these are downstream.
How do you take hops? Is that beer?
Well, it would be nice if it were, but you know what? You can make tea with hops.
All things in moderation, ladies.
All things in moderation. If you buy a natural brew, you might get benefits from the hops. It's not unheard of.
What about rosemary? How do you take rosemary? As a tea?
Well, you can take it as drops, and those are available on the Indigo Herbs website. But personally, I think if you just add it to your cooking, And don't ever rub it on your skin because it will burn. So it's quite a strong one.
So can you get it like a tincture? Like
You can get a
or
tincture.
That's indigo.
Indigo Herbs will sell a tincture. It's a very reasonable way, but don't forget it's held in alcohol, ethanol, and some people might be just a little bit affected
These
by.
ladies will get the hops then.
Yeah, yeah. The hops is a good one though. I'm banging the drum about hops because it should never have been taken off the market, but it has been. So proton pump inhibitors, don't just get me started.
What is a proton pump?
It's a medication doctors give, and it just stops the whole stomach
Is it
working.
Oh,
like omeprazole, that type of
It's
stuff?
Yeah, they did. You didn't. I didn't. Life is not sweet. Don't put off your happy life. And you know that is so true, is it not?
The six best doctors
Yeah.
anywhere.
Sunshine, water, rest, air, a little bit of exercise, and a good diet.
I was just going to ask you what we could do without spending loads of money. So I
That's
guess that's it.
Who does that every day? One of those every day. I know some people do.
Apart from the sunshine.
Very difficult up here with the sunshine. Very difficult up here with the sunshine. But you know, getting the light in your eyes is very, very good for triggering melatonin at 9 o'clock at night. So if you don't have any sunlight or any light at all in your eyes in the morning, your chances of producing good melatonin are not great. So getting
A
outside.
dull day would mean you'd be pretty miserable, wouldn't you?
Well, a dull day, but actually today's a dull day, but I can see a bit of blue sky.
No, you can see the sky.
Yeah, I can always see blue sky.
Apparently it's good to stand by a window for 10 minutes every morning.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Get yourself going. There we go. Now, we've had questions as we went along. I forgot to say maybe questions at the end, but that doesn't matter because it adds to it. Do you have any more questions you would like to ask? Yes.
Someone mentioned